my 201 students, here we are this week. This is week 10. You guys are going to be going over punishment and sentencing. Just remember, for the full points, you have to answer all the questions. And it's probably good if you don't wait till Friday at, let's see, it's at 11:59. So it's probably good if you're not waiting till 11:30 to start the PowerPoint. Like, oh my gosh, try to find the questions, and move on, okay? All right, so here we go. We're talking about crime and punishment. Should we need more punishment? Because there's obviously still lots of crime, right? A lot of stuff's happening. And they talk about the different philosophies regarding punishment. And it should be a deterrence. And I knew for a fact that I had no desire to do anything wrong because I didn't want to go to jail or end up getting kicked out of the police department or getting kicked out of school for that matter. So doing the right thing was important, right? It's a foundation, I think, of everybody. I can't say that not everybody was told right from wrong when they started, because if you're born and raised in a criminal gang element and you come in with a blank slate, right? Your brain is a blank slate. We're not pre-programmed or programmed for anything. And then you come into this world and all you see is crime and all you know is crime. You won't know you're doing something wrong till you're held accountable for it. And you're like, whoa, okay, something's wrong, and not realizing what you're doing was wrong. Okay, so deterrence. Offenders will just be discouraged from committing crimes if they fear the punishment that is associated with this act, okay? Works for me. Right? I have no desire to end up in jail, especially with a lot of people that I put away over the last 33 years, because I'm sure there's people still around. I don't want to be next to them. Like, oh, there's Ms. Gonzalez. She's the one that arrested me. And I'm sure that's going to go over real good, right? So let me ask you this, okay? It's going to be part of your assignment. So answer the question, part of your assignment. What is deterring you from right now, instead of watching this video, 10 weeks into this course, right? What's deterring you right now from being out there robbing banks, like, let's say, or committing crime? Okay, why aren't you out there right now drinking until your heart's content, almost nearly passing out, making it to the vehicle, driving down the road, and possibly killing me and my family and my daughter, or killing somebody else, right? What's deterring you from doing that? Like, what is it? Ever since you were little, I'm sure you were told right from wrong, okay? I'm going to go on the theory that the majority of people in my law enforcement class aren't criminals, but I have to say I have had my share of lots of criminals in my class. I had one guy, actually a couple of people, over the course of my classes. One guy did 25 years in prison and came and took my course, which I thought was very interesting, and he gave a new perspective of what life is really like in prison to deter people in my class from not going to prison. So anyway, I want to know right now, what is keeping you from going out and committing crime? Why aren't you just, ripping people off left and right here? And if you are ripping people off left and right, or you have lately, please do not let me know in one aspect or another, because now it's going to be committed down to the computer, which I'll have to turn you in and use it against you later on. So hopefully that's not happening and you guys are in here for the right reasons. So tell me, what's deterring you from being out in public and committing a crime? Is it that you want to get in law enforcement and do something what's right for society, hold other people accountable for not following the rules and regulations of the family? But then, that's great. So you tell me this, okay? I want to get inside your brains because I love to figure it out. Or for those who are getting into psychology, you get into this class in order to make it into some law enforcement field. You name the field, something in law enforcement. So why are there so many criminal cops out there? Okay, what happens to the police officer that gets into the force and goes rogue? Like, what do you think happens? Okay, so what happened there? All right, so in order to be effective, a punishment must possess 3 characteristics. Now, wow! This is going to be mind-blowing, right? And then all of a sudden, we're going to be able to say, okay, we got the right punishment. There's going to be no more crime, right? But it's true. The hot stove theory, right? How many times have you touched a hot stove? 10, 15, 20 times? No. You touch a stove once, ow, right? burned. Not going to do it again. Brain's like, ooh, if I do this action, the cause of touching a hot stove is this, right? So I think what happens with our system is that even though we can have somebody dead to rights or on video or something, we go through a whole rigmarole of our court system and stuff. So by the time the punishment comes down, the punishment can be 5 to 7 years later after the action, right? So there's no real consequences for the action, and they think, okay, it's really not that bad, right? They've been able to do all this bad stuff, and really it's not going to be that bad of a punishment, right? The severity of the punishment must be severe. If the punishment is not harsh enough, offenders may not be deterred from engaging in criminal behavior. Okay, so if it must be swift. Okay, it must happen right away. And that worked for me, right, early on. Believe it or not, back in the day, there was punishment handed out by the school, right? When you were young, they sent a piece of paper home and stated that the parents sign away their rights and state that you have the right to punish my child if they do something wrong, right? And I just envisioned, because our principal had this big paddle, right? And it said correction behavior paddle, right? It was a big, huge thing. And that they were allowed to spank the children in the schools using it, right? That way back in the early 70s, way before anybody here was even a twinkle in their parents' eye, okay? You guys, way. Probably have grandma and grandpas as old as me, okay? So, I always had this huge thing like, oh my gosh, seeing the principal was a big thing, and bam, smacking his kids across the room. Never wanted to get in trouble, right? Now what happens if a principal even thinks of touching a child, right? You have to, oh my gosh, don't even touch his shoulder. You have to kind of, oh my gosh, everything's so careful. And so there's no, like, oh my gosh, fear of anything, right? Like, don't touch my kid. What are you doing? Don't talk to my kid that way. Everything is taken out of context now, okay? All right, so the deterrence, if a criminal aspect doesn't happen with the suspect, there might be some civil laws, okay? And have so many classes going on at this time. There was one scenario that I posed. It was a criminal act, but can either party be held civilly? And the answer is yes. Either party, no matter if you're the suspect or your victim, you can be held responsible civilly for the actions, right? Because there's been some suspects who have went after the victims for whatever reason, right? Because you can be civilly sued for any manner. So in this case here with O.J. Simpson, he was criminally found not guilty in a court of law, right? So he can't be tried twice. However, the victim's family went after him in a civil court, and they found him guilty and has to have the civil aspect of paying back restitution for the family. So rehabilitation, right? You go to prison, they talk about, okay, we're going to rehabilitate the bad guy in prison. They're going to come out and look at that, everybody, kumbaya, everybody's wonderful, right? Go to prison, all fixed. What usually happens? 80 to 90% of the people that go to prison come right back, right? Revolving door, revolving door, revolving door. And it's very unfortunate because the last jail tour that we were allowed to take prior to COVID, right, was a revolving door. The jailer that we spoke to said he started his career, started out with dad, right? Dad gave birth to kids. Kids grown up. Here's kids with dad in jail. Okay, so his dad, he said he had dad, sometimes a kid, sometimes both at one time. Okay, so kid has children, right? So now we got children. So we got 3 generations, right? So now we got grandpa, dad, and his kids. And sometimes he said all 3 would be in at one time. And it was just all big, ha, 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 fun and games, because that was their lifestyle. Again, born in that criminal element. Don't know any better, right? Dad's a criminal, and grandpa's a criminal, everybody's a criminal. However, like everything else, there can be exceptions to that, because I have worked with police officers whose dad have been in prison. There was one that a guy I knew, a police officer, and all of a sudden he looks like he has just had the worst day of his life. And I said, dude, what is going on? What is wrong with you, right? And I'm thinking like, wow, maybe he saw they had this horrible crime scene, or, you know, maybe a baby died in his arms, something like that. He goes, my dad died. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? Why don't you go home and see him? Can't go home and see him because dad died in prison. So that's where his dad died. So here is a cop, been a cop 12, 15 years. I've known him, had no idea his dad was in prison the whole time. So it can work the other way too. So dad's in prison and a police officer came from him. Okay. Or twins. We've had police officers who've been twins. One twin is in prison, the other's a cop. So explain that. Both upbringing, same upbringing. And you talk to the twin, like, what happened to your brother? So he's like, I have no idea. We had the same upbringing. I wasn't the chosen one, or you know, they took into me better than my brother. Nope. He's like, oh, I have no idea. Okay. All right. So let's stop right here for a minute, and we'll upload this, and we'll continue on. Stand by.